I always thought the worst thing you could walk into in your own living room was either a broken TV or a chaotic mess of kids' crayon drawings all over the walls. But definitely not a painting of my wife sitting on another man's lap, right there on our couch. My name's Ross Carter. I'm 38, I live just outside Dallas, and 6 months ago, my life could have been used as a textbook example of predictable stability. Mortgage? Never late. I changed the engine oil before the car even hinted it needed it. After every barbecue, the grill was scrubbed clean until it shone. No fights. No surprises. I like that kind of order. Rachel once told me that's exactly why she chose me. You're safe, she admitted years ago, back when we were barely scraping by at 20-something. You're not chasing attention. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room. You just stay yourself. Back then, that was enough. We met at a Super Bowl party at a mutual friend's place. I hung back by the snack table. She was the one yelling at the TV, even though she only kinda sorta knew the rules of the game. Her laughter filled the room. Mine got lost in it. She decided that imbalance needed fixing. Slowly but surely, Rachel became part of my life, through homemade brownies and questionable Netflix recommendations. I fixed her laptop. In return, she started fixing the social vacuum that was my life. We're a perfect match, she loved to say. You're structure. I'm chaos. For a while, it actually worked. 10 years passed. We got a neat house in a quiet neighborhood, a backyard with a fence that leaned like it had given up on standing upright, and a dog absolutely convinced the bed belonged solely to him. I worked in corporate cybersecurity. My days were filled with firewalls, audits, risk assessments, and endless explanations to executives about why their creative side project was basically a legal time bomb. It paid well, but there was no sparkle in it. Rachel, however, found the sparkle. 3 years ago, she got a promotion as a project manager at Hartwell Dynamics, a fast-growing logistics company with a mirrored tower downtown and a CEO who loved gracing the covers of business magazines. His name was John Hartwell. Perfect hair, flawless smile, wealth that made even the well-off instinctively lower their voices. I'd only seen him once, at a corporate event. "Ross," he shouted, slapping me on the shoulder like we'd once joined the same fraternity. "Legendary man. Rachel's always talking about you." "Hope so," I replied, keeping it polite. He laughed way too loudly for that kind of comment. "Relax. I'm joking. She's a real gem. You're lucky." There was something in his tone that made me uneasy, like he was trying on lines he hadn't had to pay for yet. Rachel didn't notice. "He's like that with everyone," she waved it off. "Just intense." That word started creeping into her vocabulary more and more. John's intense. John has high standards. The project's just insanely intense. At first, I didn't think much of it. Startups often feel like hurricanes, I'd seen it before. But then came the late nights coming home. At first, it seemed normal. Stuck late because of the launch, she'd text. "Don't wait up, love red heart." The heart emoji made it feel intimate. Then those nights happened twice a week. Then 3 times a week. And then came the texts. "I'll be home around 11. John's in the room, he's going full throttle." One night, well past midnight, I saw a notification with her name. "Rachel." Stayed on the office couch. "Too exhausted to drive. Love you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Too exhausted to drive, but not too exhausted to type a full message. I replied, "Okay, take care of yourself." She didn't text again. That should have been my first warning sign. But my real problem had always been something else. I'd spent years teaching people not to be afraid of shadows, and somewhere along the way, I stopped noticing real monsters. Even when they were standing right in front of me. In my line of work, emotions are the worst possible tool. You don't react, you analyze. You don't accuse, you verify. All signals are neutral until the data says otherwise. So I did what I always did. While Rachel sank deeper into Hartwell Dynamics, I sank into information. I didn't hack her devices. Didn't install spyware. Didn't dig through private accounts. I just tracked patterns. Phone face down. Smiles at messages I never saw. Business dinners that never appeared in official reports but showed up in her personal Venmo history. The last name Hartwell kept popping up. John said. John decided. John thinks I'm indispensable. Over time, his name stopped sounding like my boss and started sounding like my center of gravity. That Friday, my team landed a new client. Hartwell Dynamics. Full perimeter audit, the manager said. Their infrastructure's a mess, but their budget covers everything. You want the project, Ross? You're good with execs. I barely managed to hold back a smile. I didn't mention that my wife worked one floor above the man who'd signed the contract. I just nodded. Yeah, I'll take it. That's how I got a temporary badge, VPN access, and a chance to see Hartwell Dynamics without the polish. I wasn't looking for Rachel, but she was everywhere. Calendar invites, project timelines, access logs with late-night entries, 11:37 p.m. and exits at 2:04 a.m. Almost a perfect match to her version of events. Almost. Then I stumbled onto the executive elevators. Separate floors, separate systems, separate logs, separate access levels. John had his own elevator. It logged badge swipes, but the reports fed into a different admin panel. Sloppily protected. That was my comfort zone. One late night, long after everyone else had logged out, I stayed behind in the test environment, scrolling through records. I told myself I was just validating data integrity. Almost by accident, I filtered the logs by last name. Hartwell. The expected number of entries. Then I added another filter. Carter. The empty table came to life. Rachel's badge had accessed the executive elevator 3 times in the past month. Every time, after 10 p.m. Every time, after working late with the team. Not a single entry marked as an official meeting. I stared at the screen, my fingers cold on the keyboard, as the puzzle I'd been avoiding assembled itself without my permission. I didn't explode. I started moving. I saved copies of the logs. Took screenshots of access histories. Downloaded public HR documents clearly stating that any personal relationship between the CEO and a direct subordinate was a severe violation. I accidentally invited Hartwell's head of internal audit for coffee, under the pretense of discussing security concerns. I deliberately pointed out a few harmless DNS issues to make the meeting look completely legitimate. And, as always, reality cracked a dark joke. The moment we sat down, he smiled and said, "Hope you didn't find anything that could get me fired." "That depends on how often you've been using the executive elevator," I replied. He laughed. I didn't. Off the record, I continued a few minutes later, "If your CEO were crossing ethical lines with employees, would you want to know?" The smile disappeared. "Ross, is this a hypothesis, or do you have something concrete?" "I'm still verifying," I said. "But if I confirm it, you'll be the first to know." He nodded slowly. "Fair." That conversation gave me 2 things. A witness. And a direction. I wasn't about to become the guy yelling in a parking lot with nothing but emotions in his hands. If I was going to talk to Rachel, I needed facts, not suspicion. Facts that could survive her tears, her explanations, and John's lawyers. What I didn't expect was for the truth to walk into my house before I could carry it out myself. The day everything finally fell apart was a Tuesday. I remember it clearly, because Rachel left the house wearing a blazer I'd never seen before. Sharp cut. Obviously expensive. Perfect fit. The kind our bank account couldn't handle unless there'd been some miracle sale. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Big review with John," she said, touching up her lipstick in the hallway mirror. "He's considering my promotion. Wants to talk one-on-one." I leaned against the doorframe. One-on-one as in, office and paperwork, or rooftop cocktails. She shot me an irritated look. "At the office. Stop imagining things. I professionally investigate people," I said. "That's what they pay me for." Being paranoid. She waved it off, smiled, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and left. At 4:30 p.m., I got an email from Hartwell's internal audit lead. "Suggest we connect tomorrow regarding those logs. Legal may need to be involved." Tomorrow. He didn't know that I'd get all the proof I needed today. I got home around 6. The driveway looked normal. Rachel's car was there. No signs of disaster. No indication that my life was actively collapsing. The front door was unlocked. That was the first thing that didn't fit. Rachel was obsessive about locks. The kind of person who checked the door twice before bed. I stepped inside with grocery bags in one hand and my laptop bag over my shoulder. I heard the voices before I saw anyone. Low, amused, way too relaxed. I turned the corner into the living room. Rachel was sitting on my couch. On another man's lap. On John's lap. She was sideways against him, pressed close, one hand resting on his chest, her legs draped over his knees, heels kicked off carelessly onto the rug, the same rug I'd spent an entire weekend picking out and paying for. He held her by the waist like he had every right to. His jacket was off, tie loosened, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. By the entryway stood two large men in dark suits, broad shoulders, earpieces in place. Security. John's eyes flicked over me instantly. A look I recognized from years in my field. Fast, cold, practical. Rachel met my gaze. She didn't look guilty. She smiled. "Oh, perfect," she said lightly, almost excited. "You're home already. I always wanted to do this with you here." The room froze. I could hear the steady hum of the AC. The ticking wall clock. The soft crackle of the grocery bag in my hand as my fingers tightened without me realizing it. I set the bag down. Slowly, carefully. The guards stepped forward almost in sync. Toward me. Not as the homeowner, but as a variable that needed to be removed. "Sir," one of them said in a rehearsed low voice, "you need to calm down and step outside." "Mr. Hartwell." I took a step back. Not away from them. Away from the couch, so I could see everyone at once. "If you take one more step," I said, and my voice sounded unsettlingly calm even to me, "this ends very badly." For everyone. They stopped. Not because I looked threatening. I'm average height, average build, the kind of guy you lose in a crowd. They stopped because I spoke like someone who wasn't bluffing. John's expression shifted just slightly. The confident CEO mask cracked, interest seeped through. "Ross," he said gently. "Let's be reasonable. We're all adults here. Sit down. Calm yourself. No need to make a scene." I didn't take my eyes off the guards. "Do either of you know who I am?" They glanced at each other. "No, sir," one said carefully. "That's a shame," I said. "You really should have checked before following your boss into another man's house." I paused. "Because right now your boss isn't just sleeping with my wife. He's doing it inside the private home of someone who has administrative access to every log, every server, and every internal communication system at Hartwell Dynamics." That stopped them. Even John's smile thinned. Rachel's disappeared completely. "Ross, what are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, unlocked it with my thumb, and tapped the screen twice. The TV flickered on behind them. On the screen appeared a desktop. Neatly organized folders. One name jumped out sharply. Hartwell, Evidence. I didn't move closer. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at John, then at his security detail, and calmly said, "I warned you. One more move, and your boss will regret it." Because what they didn't know yet was already enough. I wasn't alone. Everything had already been archived. Everything had already been sent to internal audit. And with a single tap, I could send the contents of that folder to HR, to the lawyers, to the board of directors, and to John's very expensive wife. They thought they were looking at a shocked husband. They had no idea how seriously they had underestimated the quiet guy in the room. And what happened next, when the first notification hit John's phone, froze everyone in that living room. Including Rachel. Including me. John moved first. Not his body, no one dared move. But his hand slid toward his pocket, and his eyes dropped to the vibrating phone. 1, 2, 3, rapid fire. The TV behind him displayed the same thing. Notifications started popping up in the corner of the screen. New email, internal audit. New email, HR director. New email, board chair. New email, John Hartwell, personal. The security team shifted their gaze from the TV to him, then to me, and finally realized this wasn't a jealousy scene you could muscle through. This was something else, something that smelled like lawsuits and accountability. Rachel stiffened on his lap. "Ross, what did you do?" I didn't answer her. I stared at John. His thumb trembled slightly as he opened the first email. The confident CEO mask, the smiles and stage-ready arrogance, cracked. He read the subject line first. Hartwell, documented management violations and security issues. Then he opened the email. The same email I drafted 2 nights ago and queued for sending with one click. Attachments. Logs, screenshots, policy excerpts. Every elevator swipe. Every late-night access. Every time Rachel's badge hit the executive floor after hours. And because I needed clarity, not hysteria, the email was cold and precise. To the Audit Committee, HR, and Legal Department. Attachments contained verified evidence of systematic policy violations by CEO John Hartwell, including repeated after-hours use of executive facilities with subordinates, misreported expenses, and potential misuse of corporate security resources for personal visits to private residences. Complete logs and timelines included. As an external security consultant, I am obligated to report any behavior that creates legal or reputational risk. This was exactly that case. John's face went pale as he read. Then he saw the line he'd missed. CC. John Hartwell, subject of complaint. CC. Elizabeth Hartwell, wife, public contact. His eyes shot to me. You added my wife? He hissed. You brought your mistress into my house, I replied. I thought symmetry was fair. Rachel whipped around to him. You said you'd broken up long ago. He didn't answer. The phone vibrated again. Another email. Management violations, emergency board meeting. The guards shifted, now uncertain. Sir, one started quietly. Maybe we should. John shot him a look that made the words disappear. No one moves. I finally addressed them, ignoring him. Do you realize my security system is recording you? I said calmly. You're escorting your boss into a subordinate's private home, likely using corporate resources. The senior guard swallowed. We're attached to Mr. Hartwell. Not here, I said. This isn't an office. This is my living room. And my wife. I paused. In a personal context that violates every HR policy in your company. Rachel flinched at the word violates. I inhaled slowly, keeping my tone even, cold. Gentlemen, here's the reality, I continued. If you stay here and play the role of his private muscle, you automatically become part of this story. I gestured around the room. If you leave now, you can at least say you walked away once you realized this was dangerous and unprofessional. The choice is yours. Asterisk. The younger guard looked at John, then at me. He stepped back first. I'll wait in the car, sir, he muttered. John's head whipped toward him. Excuse me? With respect, the guard replied, backing away. Legal advised us not to be here. They don't like being involved in family situations. The senior stayed a beat longer, then followed. We'll stay outside, Mr. Hartwell, he said, though his eyes said, you're on your own now. The door clicked shut behind them. And suddenly, there were 3 of us left. Me, standing on the floor of my own house. Rachel, just off his lap, confused, not knowing where to put her hands. And John, the man who thought my home was his playground, now watching a digital noose tighten around his career. He broke the silence first. You have no idea what you've done, he said. Low, venomous voice. I have a very good idea, I replied. I reported systematic abuse of the resources meant to protect the company. I followed protocol, saved copies, timestamped every piece of evidence. You overstepped, John barked. You're a contractor, not a cop. Do you think the board will believe you over me? Do you think they'll side with a passive-aggressive husband who couldn't keep his own marriage? I barely smiled. I don't expect them to take my word. That's why I sent logs, not opinions. He opened his mouth to speak, but the phone vibrated again. Another email. From legal. Request for meeting. Conflict of interest. Executive conduct. When he looked up, his confidence began to crack. This is career suicide, Ross, he said. You're trying to destroy me. You walked into my house and sat on my couch with my wife on your lap, I replied. I merely showed the board where you chose to park yourself. Rachel finally found her voice. Ross, please, she said, sliding off John as if touching him burned. Can you just stop for a second and talk to me? No, I said calmly. She blinked. No, we're past talking, I said. We're in consequence zone. I wanted to tell you, she insisted. I swear. Don't, I interrupted. Want the truth? Here it is. You weren't going to tell me anything. You planned to drag this out as long as it was convenient and safe. You were confident I'd always sit at home and wait, grateful for whatever crumbs you chose to toss me. Her face broke. That's not fair. Not fair? I snapped. That's paying for wardrobe for your affair with our mortgage money. While I patch your lover's systems. John stood, adjusting his shirt, like we were in a boardroom, not the scene of his shame. Enough, he said. You've made your point. You're angry. You've humiliated yourself and your wife to the board. That's your choice. He paused. Here's mine, he said. You'll never work at my company again. I'll make sure your firm never works with us again. After me, you'll be toxic in the industry. I tilted my head slightly. You really think you're in a position to blacklist anyone right now? His jaw tightened. Don't test me. John, I said, you hired an external cybersecurity specialist. You seriously thought that meant you were the smartest guy in the room? He squinted. What are you implying? I tapped the phone again. The TV screen changed. Emails disappeared, replaced by the log panel I knew by heart. This, I said, your project approvals that never passed internal audit. The data retention policies you signed and then ignored. Accounts you ran through phantom contractors that don't even exist. I looked at him. All timestamped. All archived. Rachel stared at the screen, then at him. What is this? He stayed silent. I continued. You should have treated your cyber team better, I said. We see everything. We patch the holes. We don't let mistakes sink the ship. I took a step with my mind, not my body. You pissed off the wrong people. Then you dragged me in by involving my wife. Rachel shook her head. Tears rolled down her face. Ross, I didn't know about all this. I know, I replied. You thought you were risking it alone. Turns out, you picked a man who uses his company as his personal ATM and playground. John stepped forward. I didn't move. You raise your voice in my house, I said quietly, and I call the cops, the press, and your wife. In that order. I inhaled. For now, I'm keeping this inside the company. I didn't CC a single journalist. But my patience has a very short timer. The timer wasn't real, but he didn't know that. His phone vibrated again. This time, he couldn't ignore it. His gaze fell on the screen, and I noticed his throat twitch as he swallowed. Who is it? I asked, though I already knew. He stayed silent, but in the dark reflection of the TV, a name appeared. Elizabeth, his wife. He hit decline. Leave my house right now, I said. Both of you. Rachel looked lost. Ross, where am I supposed to go? I'm not throwing your stuff on the lawn, I replied. Not today. Your wallet, phone, car, it's all yours. Go to a hotel, a friend's place. We'll sort out property through lawyers. Are you serious? She whispered. Never been more serious, I said. John straightened, trying to salvage some dignity. You're no longer working at my company, he said, his voice losing its former harshness. I'll take care of it. I already sent your termination notice to the head of audit, I said. The same email included your violations. I looked at him calmly. I can handle this. My skills go with me wherever I go, I added. Your reputation doesn't. For the first time since I arrived, he had no words. He grabbed his jacket, nodded briefly at Rachel, as if she were just a colleague he might run into at some networking event, and left, without saying a word. She watched him go like someone realizing their lifeboat had just sprung a hole. The door clicked shut. The house fell into an incredible silence. Ross, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please, don't leave me with this alone. I looked at her, the woman I once promised everything, and felt the last thread between us snap completely. You left yourself alone the moment you chose him over me, I said. And tomorrow, when HR, the lawyers, and his wife read every email, you'll finally understand what that really means. Her eyes filled with tears again. So, what now? Now, I said, walking past her in the hallway. You start figuring out who you really are, without his money, and without the stability I provided that kept you afloat. I stopped at the doorway, looking back just once. And, by the way, I added, you need to find a lawyer by morning. Because the consequences had already begun. She hadn't fully realized them yet. And somewhere deep inside me, the part that had quietly worked while she played with fire, knew the real shock was still ahead. The next morning, 6:42 a.m., my phone rang. Morgan, my lawyer. HR got in touch, he said. They found more than expected. John has been suspended during the investigation. Your wife has been ordered not to come to the office. The news will be announced internally soon. It happened faster than anyone could have imagined. By 9 a.m., the company released a statement on temporary leadership. By noon, his wife issued her own statement. She's filing for divorce. By 3 p.m., a special audit was announced, and John's access was officially revoked. And Rachel? She finally wrote. Please, talk to me. I didn't think it would get this bad. I need you. I'm scared. I stared at the screen for a long time, then replied in a single line. Fear comes when you put everything on someone who never needed you. She didn't respond. Not that evening. Not the next day. But her mother did. The message was unexpectedly measured. Benjamin, we are ashamed of what happened. When she's ready, she'll apologize properly. But for now, she has to face everything she's been afraid of. I appreciated that. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I was no longer her emotional emergency exit. A week later, I walked into a local coffee shop, and the barista handed me my order with a curious look. You're the cybersecurity guy who exposed the CEO, right? She asked quietly. Everyone's talking about it. I didn't boast. I didn't savor the moment. I just nodded. I reported what needed reporting. She smiled shyly. You know, we close early on Fridays. If you ever want a company that respects you, I'm here. I smiled back. Not because I needed her approval, but because I finally understood something important. Respect isn't power. It's not threats. It's not trying to hold on to someone who doesn't value you. Respect is quiet and mutual. I left the coffee shop feeling a relief I hadn't felt in months. Some take revenge with shouts. Some with pain. I took revenge simply by walking away and letting the truth do the rest.